Hey, and welcome back to the PowerKPIs Getting Started course series. In this session, we will show you how to create a nice looking KPI grid showing measures across a specific dimension. If you want to follow along and try it out for yourself, you can find the download link to this workbook in the description below. If you have not checked out session number 1 of this series, where we explain the very basics of PowerKPIs, we recommend to do this first. Okay, for this example, we will navigate to dashboard number 2. Here you can see the finished KPI grid we want to achieve. We've got 4 KPI cards showing profit versus profit budget across the 4 regions we have in our dataset: Central, East, South, and West as our dimension. Instead of using region, we could of course also use any other dimension we have in our data, such as customer segments, company branches, product categories, and so on. Inside each KPI card, we have a big angry number showing the profit value of the current months. We have a comparison value versus the previous months, which the extension calculates automatically for us, and a comparison value versus our profit budget. And then, of course, we have our chart showing the KPI development over time. We can zoom into each card simply by double-clicking into the card, so we can explore it in a little more depth. And we can get out of the zoom in by double clicking again. We can also use the menu in the top right of the canvas to adjust the sorting of the cards, for example, according to the numeric values inside the card, or also according to alphabetical order. Okay, so let's create this together. To do so, we have to open a new worksheet, and we will simply call this grid view. And then we need to access our PowerKPIs extension at first. To do this, simply enter the drop-down menu in the marks card and select PowerKPIs as your viz extension. If you cannot find PowerKPIs in there, you might need to go ahead and download the extension first from our extension portal. And once you have downloaded it, you can add it to your view by clicking Add Extension and then Access Local Viz Extension. You can also take a look at our first video of the series where we explain this process in a little more detail. Once we've selected the extension, we can start pulling in all of our data pills. First, we pull in our measure names, which we find down here onto our measure names field. Then also our measure values. And then we need to pull in our date field, which we have here, order date, and we pull this onto the date pane. And then we can already see that the PowerKPIs are being constructed. To view our KPIs on a monthly basis, we can simply right-click our date pill and select months. Best practice here is to take the second option for months, so not this one, but this one instead, as this option also respects the year of each month, which will ensure the correct order and aggregation of each value. As you can see, we now have a KPI grid showing all of our measures that we have in our data set. Since for this example we are only interested in profit and profit budget, we will filter out the other ones we don't need. To do so, we go to the filters pane, right click on measure names, click on edit filter, and then we can simply uncheck all the boxes of the values that we don't need for this example. In this case, the only ones that we are interested in is profit and profit budget. Click OK, and you will see that we now have 2 KPI cards, one showing the profit over time and one showing the profit budget over time. The last step to do here to construct our basic KPI layout is to choose the dimension that we want to use. In our case, we need region, and we simply drag and drop this onto our dimension field. To finalize our grid view and make it look nice and professional, we need to make some more configurations. For this, we can simply navigate to the burger menu in the top left corner of the canvas, where we will find several options for formatting. We have a general tab for general settings. We have a tab for adjusting how our measures are being displayed, and we have a tab where we can apply more design settings to the cards themselves. As a first step, it typically makes sense to define what the main value of our KPI cards should be and also what the comparison values should be. To do this, we simply navigate to Set up PowerKPIs, open the third drop-down menu, Configure Visualization, and navigate all the way to the bottom. This section gives you an overview of all the available measure names in your view. Since we've only got profit and profit budget currently, those are also the only two options that the extension provides right here. The first thing you can do is you can rename your measure names if you want. We can, for instance, go ahead and say profit budget. This name is a bit too long. We will just stick with budget here and it still does the trick. Very important, renaming the measure names here does not affect the whole dashboard, but simply this particular KPI view. So the data pills in here will still remain according to their original names. Next to renaming our measure names, we can also determine the role they should hold with the big angry number and the chart. In our case, we want profit to be our main value in the big angry number in the chart. This is already given. And we want our budget to be the comparison value. To do this, we simply open the drop-down menu and select comparison 1 for the big angry number and also comparison 1 for the chart. If you click Save, you can already see the changes that have been applied. On the one hand, we have an additional comparison value next to our versus previous comparison value that is calculated automatically. And also in the chart, if we double click this card, we can see we've got our profit in the bars and the small little lines are our comparison value number 1, which is the budget, which we just set here. Since we are looking at profit and profit budget, we want our numbers to be displayed as currencies. To do this, we can use the second menu tab in our menu. And in here, we can adjust how our metrics are being displayed. As you can see, we have one drop-down menu for each card that is in our view, one for Central, one for East, one for South, one for West. And we could now open each card, and in here we can adjust the different settings. For instance, how many decimals should be displayed, and also right here, what kind of number formatting we want. We can select number, currency, or percentage. Since adjusting KPI cards individually can take quite long, especially if you have more cards than just 4, you can also use the Set Metric Formats Globally setting. By activating this, all the metrics that you apply will correspond to each KPI card in your view. So in here, we can just go over to formatting, select currency accordingly. We could also adjust the currency type here. We could adjust the decimals to 2. And after we click Save here, we will see that each KPI card now has a euro sign in front of it. Another thing we can adjust here is the steering type. The steering type basically determines the conditional coloring of the values according to the logic behind the metric that we are looking at. In this case, it says higher is positive, and looking at profit, this typically is true, so we can leave it as it is, but we could also use other cases. As a final configuration step, we can now adjust the design of our KPI cards to make it look even nicer and more professional. To do this, we simply navigate to the third tab of our configuration menu, where we have plenty of options to choose from. In the general section, we can, for instance, go ahead and determine the number of columns we want to have in our grid view. In our case, we will select 2. In the layout section, we can choose between different layouts that we want to apply to our KPI cards. Here we will select layout 6. In the themes section, we can go ahead and apply different color schemes to our view. We can make it manually or simply choose from the predefined color themes. In this case, we will just select Financial Times. And then lastly, we can go ahead and also enable steering color, which will highlight the different KPI cards according to their values. Simply click Save, and we can see the final outcome. We now have a fully functional KPI grid showing our different measures across a selected dimension. In the next video, we will show you how to create another grid view, but using a scenario column to indicate the metrics. If you found this video helpful, please leave a like and a comment and consider subscribing to our channel.